A single mom finds a lost little girl walking barefoot on a snowy highway and decides to take her home for the night. But when she calls the sheriff, everything changes. Because this girl isn't just lost. She's the daughter of a man everyone in town fears. A former Hell's Angel just released from prison. When the biker father shows up at her door, the mom braces for danger. But instead of threats, he brings a warning. Someone's coming for her, and for the child she's trying to protect. As the truth unravels, she learns her late husband was hiding something that could destroy them all, and that this broken biker might be the only one who can save them. Two strangers, one little girl, a past filled with secrets, and a fight for redemption that could cost them everything. What happens when the road to forgiveness leads straight into danger? Drop a comment below and share which part of the world you're tuning in from today. If you enjoy stories like this, don't forget to subscribe for more. Snowflakes danced like bits of silver in the headlights as Malia Harper drove down the empty mountain road. The wipers scraped across her windshield, spreading thin streaks of ice. It was nearly midnight, and her shift at the diner had dragged longer than usual. Her eyes ached, her feet hurt, and her heart longed for home. Her small rented house, her warm bed, and most of all, her 9-year-old son, Nathan, who was probably asleep by now. Malia whispered a quiet prayer of thanks as the town lights faded behind her. Life hadn't been kind lately, but she kept moving forward. She always did. After her husband's death 2 years ago, she had learned to carry on, smiling through the pain, doing double shifts, and holding tight to her faith that someday things would get better. Her tires hissed over the wet asphalt. She was halfway up the last hill when something caught her eye. At first she thought it was a deer. Then the beam of her headlights shifted, and she saw a small figure standing by the roadside. Her heart slammed in her chest. She slowed down, peering through the falling snow. It was a little girl. Barefoot, wearing only a thin nightgown, her arms wrapped around a threadbare teddy bear. "Oh, Lord," Malia whispered, pulling the car to the shoulder. She opened her door, and a gust of freezing wind cut through her coat. The little girl didn't move. She just stared, big eyes wide, her lips trembling. "Honey?" Malia called softly, stepping closer. "Are you okay? Where's your mama?" The child shook her head, backing up a step. She looked no older than 8. Her cheeks were pale, and her hair clung to her wet face. "It's all right," Malia said, keeping her voice calm. "I won't hurt you. You look so cold. Let's get you warm, okay?" The girl didn't answer. Malia slowly crouched and unwrapped her scarf. "See this? It's soft. I'll put it around you." After a long moment, the child edged closer. When Malia draped the scarf over her small shoulders, she could feel how cold her skin was. "Come on, sweetheart. Let's get out of the cold." Malia guided her gently toward the car, opened the passenger door, and helped her inside. The girl sat stiffly, clutching her teddy bear tight against her chest. "What's your name?" Malia asked once she started the engine again. The girl didn't look at her. Her voice came out barely above a whisper. Don't send me back." Malia's throat tightened. "I won't, I promise." The rest of the drive was silent except for the steady rhythm of the heater. Every few minutes, Malia glanced at the girl. She looked so fragile, like a bird that had fallen from its nest. When they reached the house, the porch light glowed through the snow. Malia hurried the girl inside and closed the door behind them, locking out the wind. Nathan appeared in the hallway, rubbing his eyes. "Mom? You're home late. Who's that?" "Shh," Malia said softly. "Go back to bed, honey. I'll explain in the morning." But Nathan didn't move. He blinked at the little girl curiously. Is she okay? Malia knelt beside her unexpected guest. She's freezing. Let's warm her up first. In the kitchen, Malia poured hot water into a mug and stirred in cocoa powder. She handed the cup to the girl, who stared at it for a moment before sipping slowly. Her hands shook so hard that some spilled onto the counter. You poor thing, Malia murmured, grabbing a towel. Here, I'll get you some dry clothes. She found one of Nathan's old t-shirts and a pair of pajama pants. They were too big, but at least they were clean and warm. After the girl changed, Malia tucked her into the couch with a blanket. The girl's eyes darted around the room, toward the framed photo of Malia's late husband, the small Christmas tree in the corner, the sleeping dog by the door. You can rest here tonight, Malia said softly. Tomorrow we'll figure everything out. You're safe now. The child didn't answer. She just curled up tighter, her teddy bear pressed to her face. Malia sat on the armchair nearby, watching the fire crackle. Nathan crept out again and whispered, Can she stay? For now, Malia said. He nodded, his voice full of childlike wonder. She looks like she needs a friend. Malia smiled faintly and brushed his hair from his eyes. You have the kindest heart, Nathan. Now go on back to bed. When the house finally fell quiet, Malia gazed at the girl sleeping on her couch. The storm outside had grown louder, snow piling against the windows. The child's breathing was shallow but steady. Something about her tugged at Malia's soul, something she couldn't explain. It wasn't just pity. It was a strange, deep pull, as if God himself had placed this lost child in her path. She whispered another prayer before turning off the lamp. Lord, if you sent her to me, help me do right by her. The next morning came gray and cold. The storm had passed, leaving a blanket of white across the fields. The smell of coffee filled the kitchen as Malia scrambled eggs and set out toast. When the girl awoke, she looked around in confusion. Good morning, Malia said kindly. You're safe. You must be hungry. The girl nodded shyly and sat at the table. Nathan grinned across from her. I saved you the big piece of toast, he said. For the first time, a tiny smile flickered across the girl's face. What's your name, sweetheart? Malia asked again. The girl hesitated. Shh, Holly. Well, Holly, Malia said. You can call me Malia, and this is Nathan. He talks a lot, but he's nice. Nathan giggled. Mom. Holly's faint smile grew a little. It was the first sign that she might finally be letting her guard down. After breakfast, Malia called the sheriff's office. She explained everything: the storm, the roadside, the little girl with no shoes. Sheriff Daniels promised to send someone over. We'll check for missing children in the area, he said. When he arrived later that morning, Holly froze. She gripped Malia's hand tightly, her knuckles white. It's okay, Malia whispered. He's here to help. The sheriff crouched to Holly's level. You're safe now, sweetheart. Can you tell me your last name? Holly shook her head violently. Tears welled up in her eyes. Don't let them take me back, she cried. Malia's heart broke. She knelt beside her, rubbing her shoulder. No one's taking you anywhere you don't want to go. You're safe here. The sheriff stood, frowning. She's terrified. Might be trauma. I'll run her description through the database. Keep her here till I call. When he left, Malia sat with Holly by the fire. The girl barely spoke, but she seemed calmer now. Nathan came over, holding out his favorite toy car. You can borrow it, he said proudly. Holly hesitated, then took it carefully. Thank you. It was such a small thing, but it made Malia's eyes sting. By late afternoon, the clouds cleared and golden light poured into the house. Holly fell asleep again, her head resting on the teddy bear. Malia used the quiet to tidy up, though her thoughts raced. Who was Holly running from? What kind of life left a child out in the snow with bruises on her wrists? When her phone rang that evening, she jumped. It was the sheriff. "We found a match," he said. "The girl's name is Holly Raines. She's the daughter of Jack Raines, a former Hells Angel out of Denver. He got out of prison last month." Malia's heart dropped. "Prison?" "Yep. Word is he's on his way to claim his kid. Be careful. That man's got a record as long as my arm." After she hung up, Malia sank onto the couch. The clock ticked in the silence. Outside, the snow glittered like broken glass under the moonlight. She looked over at Holly, sleeping peacefully, and whispered, "Lord, what have I gotten into?" A low rumble echoed from far down the road. It grew louder, steady, thunderous. Malia stepped to the window. A motorcycle's headlights cut through the night. The sound rolled closer until it stopped in her driveway. The rider swung off, his leather jacket gleaming under the porch light, his boots crunching in the snow. Malia's breath caught. He took off his helmet. His face was hard, weathered, but his eyes, there was something wounded in them. He looked toward the window. Then, softly, almost like a prayer, he said one word. "Holly." Malia froze, her pulse quickening, and inside, the little girl stirred, her eyes snapping open, whispering in fear, "He's not the one who hurt me." Outside, the engine ticked in the cold, and the man waited. The porch light cast a yellow circle on the snow. The man stood inside that circle, helmet in one hand, steam of breath rising in the cold. Malia's heart pounded so hard she could hear it in her ears. She glanced back at the couch. Holly had pushed herself up, eyes wide, both hands gripping the teddy bear like a shield. "It's okay," Malia said, though she wasn't sure it was true. She reached for the chain lock, slid it free, and opened the door only a little. The cold swept in like a wave, carrying the smell of wet leather and gasoline. The man kept his hands open at his sides. "I'm not here to scare you," he said in a rough voice. "I just need to know if she's safe." "Who are you?" Malia asked. Her voice did not sound like her own. It sounded thin, like a string pulled too tight. "Name's Jack Raines." She already knew. The sheriff's call still pressed like a stone in her stomach. She looked over her shoulder. Holly's small lips moved. Malia read the shape of the whisper. "He's not the one who hurt me." Malia drew a breath. "You can talk from the porch," she said, "and keep your hands where I can see them." Jack gave a single nod. He set the helmet on the rail and laced his fingers together. The tattoos on his knuckles were dark lines in the light. His eyes flicked past her to the couch and softened. "Holly," he said, very quiet. "Baby girl?" Holly did not answer. She looked ready to run, but she didn't. She watched him like a wild fawn watches a hunter, frozen but thinking. "She's safe," Malia said. "I found her on the highway last night. I called the sheriff. He said you—" She didn't finish. She didn't want to spread fear inside her own home. "I know what he said," Jack replied. "I earned it. I won't pretend I didn't. But I'm not that man now." Cold air pricked Malia's skin. She stepped a little closer to the door, as if the frame could protect her. "Why are you here?" "To keep her safe." His jaw tightened. "There are men looking for her, not police, not people who wear badges, people who don't stop." Malia thought of the purple, bruises on Holly's wrists. She thought of the nightgown with no shoes, of the way Holly had begged, "Don't let them send me back." The pieces wanted to fit, but she needed more. "How do I know you're her father?" she asked. Jack reached slowly into his jacket and produced a worn wallet. He opened it flat, showing an old photo behind cracked plastic. A little girl in pigtails grinned up at the camera, 2 front teeth missing, the same shy dimple in the left cheek that Holly had. Beside the picture was a birth certificate copy, rough and folded. "I can call the sheriff," Malia said. "He can confirm." "Call him," Jack said. "Please." Malia kept the door half closed, pulled out her phone, and dialed Sheriff Daniels. She set it to speaker. The sheriff answered on the 3rd ring, voice thick with coffee and long years. "Sheriff," she said, eyes on Jack. "He's here." "Rains?" the sheriff asked. "Yes." "Put me on speaker near him," the sheriff said. "Both of you listen." Malia held out the phone. The sheriff's voice filled the doorway. "Rains, you pull any stunt, I swear—" "No stunts," Jack said. "I'm standing on a porch with my hands folded and my helmet on the rail." A sigh came through the speaker. "Malia, don't let him inside yet. I'll send a unit to sit near your place tonight. I ran the records. The girl is likely his. But I want daylight and more backup before we do any handoffs. You hear me?" "I hear you," Malia said. "Rains," the sheriff went on. "You stay in the open and you stay calm. I got my eye on you." "Fine," Jack said without heat. "Just keep your eye on the tree line too." The call ended. Malia lowered the phone but did not put it away. Her fingers were cold from the night air. "You heard him," she said. "You can't come in." "I figured," Jack said. He glanced toward the dark road and the edge of the woods beyond the ditch. His eyes kept moving, not fast, but in steady checks. A man used to reading shadows. "I'll sit on the steps if that's all right." Malia hesitated. She imagined shutting the door in his face. She imagined turning the deadbolt and dragging a chair against the knob. But if danger lived in the trees, it did not care about locked doors. "Sit," she said at last, "but you keep your helmet off so I can see your face." He sat on the top step, helmet by his boot. The porch light made a pale circle around him. Snow drifted lazy and soft. Inside, the house held its breath. Malia left the door cracked a few inches and pulled a chair close, facing him. 1 foot braced against the threshold. Behind her, the fire snapped. The dog lifted its head, sniffed, then put its muzzle back on its paws. Quiet. Watchful. Holly stood at the end of the hall, where the shadow split into warm light. She did not come closer, but she did not hide. Nathan crept out of his room in sock feet, eyes big, and leaned against Malia's leg. "It's late," Malia murmured without turning. "Back to bed, buddy." Nathan leaned harder. "Is he bad?" Jack did not move his head, but his voice softened. "No, kid. I'm trying to be good." "Then why do you look like that?" Nathan asked. "Like you got in a lot of fights." Jack's mouth twitched, not quite a smile. "Because I did." Nathan seemed to weigh that. "Are you going to take her?" he asked. Jack shook his head. "Not tonight. Not until it's safe." Malia felt some tightness in her chest give way. "Why are they after her?" she asked. "Be plain with me." Jack stared straight ahead at the yard. The slow drift of flakes showed the faint breeze. "I made enemies, a long time ago. A man named Trigger ran things when I went away. He doesn't like that I walked out with a heartbeat and a Bible. He doesn't like that I'm not afraid of him. And he knows this little girl is the one thing that could break me." "Why?" Malia asked, though she suspected. Jack's voice dropped low. "Because she's mine." A soft sound came from the hallway. Malia turned. Holly had slipped closer, step by careful step, drawn by the truth in his tone. She had not crossed the rug between them. She stood on its edge as if an invisible line ran there. Jack took a breath and let it go. "I'm sorry," he told the girl. "For every year you were alone. For every night you were scared. For the mess I made." Holly hugged the bear tighter, but her chin lifted a little. I don't want to go back," she said. "You won't," Jack said. "Not to the bad place, not to the bad people, I swear it." Malia watched the tiny muscles in Holly's face loosen, the first thread of trust tied to that promise. She felt it tie to her too. Her mind flashed to a memory of her husband, laughing in the kitchen, flour on his hands, turning to kiss her cheek. He had been a good man. She believed that with her whole heart. But she also remembered the old photo she had found, hidden among his tools. Her husband standing next to a man who looked a lot like Jack, both young and alive. She pushed the thought away like a drawer she would open later. A thin gust moved across the yard and set the wind chimes to trembling. It was quiet otherwise. Too quiet. Jack's eyes went back to the tree line. "You should turn off the porch light," he said. "Makes you easy to spot." Malia flicked the switch. Darkness wrapped around them, softer than the glare. Her night vision rose. The snowfield became a gray plain with darker edges where the pines stood. Jack motioned with his chin. "See that?" he asked. At first she saw nothing. Then a darker dark shifted near the ditch, as if the night itself took a breath. Her hand tightened on the door. "Get inside," she said. Jack shook his head. "If I move, they move," he murmured. "If I stay, they hesitate. They want the girl, not me. But they won't take her. Through me with witnesses." Malia's skin prickled. She raised her phone and typed fast. "To Sheriff. Someone's in the trees," a reply buzzed quick. "Unit 2 minutes out. Stay inside. Keep door closed." She looked at Jack. 2 minutes. Jack's shoulders eased a fraction. He kept his eyes on the shape by the ditch. The shape did not come closer. It stayed like a stain at the edge of the world. Inside the house, the old clock ticked. Nathan shifted his weight and yawned, but did not leave his spot by Malia's leg. Holly did not move at all. She stared at her father as if willing him to keep breathing where she could see him. A wash of red and blue lights slid along the far trees before the sound of sirens reached them. The dark shape pulled back, born again into the larger dark. Jack let out a breath, quiet as ash floating. A patrol car rolled slow up the road and parked near the mailbox. Another stopped at the back lane that ran past the house toward the fields. 2 deputies stepped out, hands on belts, scanning the ditch and woods with bright beams. Sheriff Daniels climbed out of the first car, his heavy coat buttoned to his throat. He eyed the porch, the door, Jack on the step, and gave a small nod, like a teacher marking down attendance. Then he swept his light into the trees. "Tracks," one deputy called. "Fresh, 2 sets, stopped here, backtracked." "Of course they backtracked," the sheriff muttered. "Coyotes on 2 legs." He came to the porch, boots knocking snow off the steps. He looked at Malia first. "You all right?" "We're okay," she said. He turned to Jack. "You, don't move unless I tell you." Jack lifted both hands a little. "Wouldn't dream of it." The sheriff studied his face for a long second. Then he lowered the flashlight. "We'll sit a car on your road until sunup," he said to Malia. "Keep your doors locked. Rains, if you're smart, you'll keep your mouth shut and your tail in the open." "Copy that," Jack said, a dry edge to his voice that was not quite sarcasm. "Good," said the sheriff. He started to step back, then paused. "Malia, can we talk inside? Privately." Malia glanced at Jack, then at Holly, then back to the sheriff. 2 minutes, she said. She closed the door most of the way and led the sheriff to the kitchen. The fire threw orange light across the floor. The sheriff took off his hat and set it on the counter. "You sure you want him here?" he asked in a low voice. "I'm sure I want her safe," Malia answered. "He says men are watching the house. You saw the tracks." "I did," the sheriff said. He rubbed his jaw. "And I don't like any of it. There's a storm under this snow, I can feel it." He looked toward the hall where Holly stood with Nathan. His eyes softened. "We'll do our job, but you be careful who you trust." "I am being careful," Malia said. The sheriff nodded once and put his hat back on. "All right. Lock up. Don't open the door again tonight." When he stepped out, cold air crept along the floor and then stayed on the other side as the door closed. Malia slid the deadbolt with a decisive click. "Can I sleep on the couch by the door?" Nathan asked. "I can keep watch." "You can sleep in your bed," Malia said, smoothing his hair. "Deputies will keep watch." "What about him?" Nathan tilted his head toward the door. Malia hesitated. She felt the pull of fear and the pull of mercy. Mercy won. "He can stay on the porch." Nathan nodded like this made sense. He shuffled toward his room, then stopped and turned to Holly. "You can have my extra pillow," he said, and ran to get it. Holly looked at Malia, the bear clutched under her chin. "Can we leave the light on?" she asked. "We can," Malia said. She tucked Holly back on the couch with the blanket up to her neck and Nathan's pillow under her head. She checked the windows. She checked the back door. She checked the lock on the side door twice. Then she went to the closet, grabbed an old quilt, and carried it to the porch. Jack turned as the door opened a crack. "You don't have to—" "It's cold," she said, handing him the folded quilt through the gap. He accepted it like a gift from a stranger at a funeral. "Thank you." "Don't read into it," she said, but her voice was gentle. "It's just a quilt." He huffed a breath that might have been a laugh. "Understood." She closed the door again and leaned her forehead against it for a moment. The wood was cool. Her heart had slowed to something human. The house settled. The deputies' headlights threw slow sweeps of pale along the far wall as their cars idled on the road. Malia sat in the armchair where she could see Holly, the front door, and the kitchen. The clock ticked like a metronome guiding her through the long night. Dozing drifted over her more than once, but each time a branch tapped the glass or the heater kicked on, she woke and checked all the places a mother checks. Sometime after 2, the wind shifted and brought a brittle silence. It was almost dawn when the quiet broke. It happened fast. A small thud on the porch, a sharp rattle, and then a crash. The front window beside the door exploded inward, glass scattering across the rug like ice thrown by a shovel. Malia jerked to her feet. Holly screamed and rolled off the couch, crawling under the coffee table. Nathan ran from his room, eyes huge, bare feet slapping the floor. "Stay down," Malia cried, pulling both children behind the armchair. The dog barked and then went silent, ears high, body rigid. Jack's silhouette filled the gap where the curtains stirred. "Everyone stay back," he shouted, voice like a gunshot. The deputies' sirens hit in the same breath, a sudden wail slicing the night. Their doors slammed. Boots pounded on the porch. Jack reached through the broken window and flicked the deadbolt. He pushed. The door opened with his shoulder and stooped fast, grabbing something from the floor inside, a fist-sized rock wrapped in paper and bound with twine. He tossed it to the rug, where it came to rest by the arm of the chair. The twine had cut deep into the paper. Red letters bled through. Malia stared at it as the sheriff burst into the room, flashlight carving a path. "Everyone okay?" he barked, scanning for blood, for wounds, for holes in the walls. "We're okay," Malia managed, voice shaking. "We're okay." The sheriff's light landed on the rock. He bent, tore the paper free, and read the message. His face changed, not with surprise, but with a dark, quiet anger. He handed the note to Malia. The letters were thick and messy, like they had been painted in a hurry with a broken brush. "We know what he took. You're next." For a long second, the house made no sound at all. Then Holly began to cry, a thin, soft sound that stabbed right through the center of the room. Jack took one step forward like gravity pulled him. The sheriff held up a hand. "Easy," he said to Jack. "You stay where I can see you." Jack stopped. He did not argue. He looked at Malia. Not at the broken glass, not at the note, not at the deputies circling like hounds. He looked at her as if asking a question without words. "Will you still trust me? Will you let me help?" Malia held the paper in both hands. It shook like a leaf in wind. She read the words again, and something fierce rose in her chest. Not panic, not yet. Something else. A mother's hard line. She lifted her chin. "We're not running," she said, more to herself than anyone. "We're not hiding either. We're going to find out what this means." The sheriff slid a look at her, at the man on her porch, at the child under her table. "All right," he said, steady again. "Then the first thing we're going to do is board this window, make a plan, and keep the sun on our side." Dawn touched the far ridge then, gray turning silver. It slid over the field, climbed the porch posts, and fell across Jack's worn face. He looked both old and new in that light, a man with a past sitting inside a future he did not yet know. Malia folded the note and tucked it into her pocket. She felt the shape of it against her palm, heavy for a piece of paper. She looked at the girl she had promised to protect. She looked at the boy who believed in everyone. She looked at the man who claimed he had changed. "Coffee," she said, voice firm now. "I'll make coffee. Then we talk." Outside, the deputies moved to the trunk of a cruiser for plywood and nails. Inside, Nathan gathered the biggest pieces of glass with a dustpan, serious as a soldier on duty. Holly crawled out and climbed into the armchair, the teddy bear pressed to her chest, watching everyone like she was learning their names by the way they moved. Jack stayed on the threshold, blanket pulled tighter around his shoulders, as if the line between in and out was the only law he dared not break. He looked at the broken window, at the rock, at Malia's steady hands. "Thank you," he said in a voice almost too low to hear. "For what?" Malia asked, turning on the kettle. "For not closing the door," he said. She didn't answer. The kettle whistled. The sun broke free of the ridge. The house, cracked but holding, breathed in the light of morning, ready for whatever truth would come next. The world looked washed out that morning, the sky a soft sheet of white pressed low over the valley. Malia brewed coffee strong enough to chase the night from her bones. She'd hardly slept. Every sound had made her sit up, listening for engines or footsteps. When dawn finally came, it felt like grace. Through the kitchen window, she saw Jack Rains sitting on the porch steps, where he'd stayed most of the night. The quilt she'd given him was drawn over his shoulders, frost sparkling on its edge. He was staring out at the road, not moving much, but not asleep either. A man waiting for something he hoped wouldn't come. She poured 2 mugs, hesitated, then opened the door. Cold air nipped her cheeks. "Here," she said, handing him a cup. He blinked as if surprised. "Thanks." His fingers were raw and red. "You can come inside," she said after a beat. "Just keep your voice down. The kids are still asleep." He stood slowly, stretching the stiffness from his legs, and stepped into the living room. Morning light cut through the cracked window boards the deputies had nailed up. Malia watched him glance around the room. Fireplace, sofa, pictures on the wall, as if memorizing a life he'd never had. "I appreciate this," he said. "You didn't have to trust me." "I haven't decided if I do yet." She tried to sound firm, but her voice came out gentler than she meant. Jack nodded like he deserved the doubt. "Fair." He drank the coffee, then set the mug down. Listen, Malia, there's more to this than what I said last night. She crossed her arms. Then say it plain. He took a slow breath. When I went away, I left behind more than bad blood. The club I rode with dealt in things that weren't just illegal. They were evil. Guns, drugs, people. I didn't know all of it until it was too late. When I tried to pull out, Trigger, the man running things, said I'd never walk free. Your husband was the only one who helped me. He took something that could expose them. Money, yes, but also proof. He hid it before they could kill him. Malia's throat tightened. My husband? Yeah. He told me if anything happened, I'd find it through him. Now Trigger thinks you know where it is. That's why they're circling. Malia turned toward the window. The hills looked peaceful in daylight, the kind of peace that lied. You're saying the people who killed my husband are the same ones after Holly? I'm saying it's all connected. Jack rubbed his jaw. And I'm saying I'll keep them off you if you let me. She faced him. And why would I let a man with your record protect my child and someone else's? Because I've already failed one family, he said quietly. I'm not failing another. The room went still, except for the faint crackle of the fire. Malia studied his face, the deep lines, the scar at his temple, the tired eyes that didn't try to look innocent. For the first time she saw the weight he carried, and believed it might be real. Holly appeared in the doorway, hair a tangle of sleep. Daddy, she whispered. Jack's head turned fast, and for a heartbeat, he looked young. Yeah, baby, he said softly. Malia's heart twisted. Holly crossed the room and climbed onto his lap like it was the most natural thing in the world. He wrapped his arms around her carefully, as if afraid she might break. Nathan shuffled in next, rubbing his eyes. Mom, can we eat pancakes today? Malia blinked back tears, forcing a smile. Yeah, sweetheart. Pancakes? As she mixed the batter, she heard Jack murmuring to Holly about her teddy bear, asking if she still named it Benny. The little girl nodded against his chest. Something inside the house eased. After breakfast, the sheriff stopped by. He stepped onto the porch, hat in hand. Morning, he said, his tone heavy. We found some tire tracks down by the river road. Looks like whoever was watching last night moved on, but I'd still keep sharp. Malia nodded. Do you know who they are? The sheriff looked at Jack, then back at her. Names I've heard before. Trigger's one of them. You might want to keep this man close, for now. He's got reason to keep you breathing. When the sheriff left, Jack offered to fix the broken fence out back so the dog wouldn't wander. Nathan followed him with a hammer almost too big for his hands. Malia watched from the kitchen window as the two worked together. Jack driving nails, Nathan holding boards steady, talking non-stop. Holly sat nearby in the grass, humming to herself, sun warming her pale face. For the first time in a long while, Malia felt something close to peace. That afternoon, she walked outside with lemonade and handed a glass to Jack. Fence looks good, she said. He wiped sweat from his forehead. It'll hold, least for now. Nathan grinned up at her. He says I'm a good helper. You are, she said, kissing his head. Jack's eyes softened. He reminds me of myself at that age, back before I made a mess of things. Malia tilted her head. You really believe people can change? I have to, he said simply. The sun dipped low, turning the snow to gold. They stood in silence, listening to the wind slide through the trees. For a brief, shining moment, it felt like the world might let them start over. But as evening crept in, a low rumble echoed down the road. Jack's posture stiffened. He set down the hammer and moved toward the fence line, eyes scanning the distance. A pickup truck slowed near the mailbox, then roared away. The sound faded, leaving the smell of exhaust on the wind. "Friends of yours?" Malia asked. "Not the kind that send Christmas cards." Inside, she checked the locks again. When she turned back to the living room, Jack stood by the window, watching the last light fade. "Do you ever get tired of looking over your shoulder?" she asked quietly. "Every day," he said. "But when you stop looking, that's when it catches you." Malia glanced at the children playing on the rug. "Then we'll keep looking," she said. Jack nodded once. "Tomorrow I'll tell you everything I know about Trigger. If we're going to keep them safe, you need the full truth." He picked up his jacket and stepped out onto the porch again. Snow began to fall, soft and steady, covering the day's footprints. Inside, Malia tucked the kids into bed. Holly whispered, "Is Daddy going to stay?" "For a little while," Malia said, brushing her hair back. "Just until it's safe." Holly smiled and hugged her teddy bear. "Then we're already safer." Malia turned off the lamp and lingered a moment, listening to the quiet breathing of two children who trusted her completely. Outside, Jack sat under the porch light, the faint glow painting his face in tired gold. She watched him through the window, heart caught between fear and something softer. Maybe hope. The snow thickened, muffling the world. And in that hush between night and morning, Malia whispered to herself, "Please, Lord, don't let me be wrong about him." The next morning came pale and cold, sunlight stretching across the frost like ribbons of gold. The smell of coffee filled the air. Malia stood at the stove, flipping pancakes for the children, while Jack Rains sat at the kitchen table, wrapping tape around his bruised knuckles from fixing the fence the day before. Nathan chatted happily about school projects. Holly giggled for the first time, a sound light as bird song. For a few fleeting moments, it felt like they were a family. Malia tried not to think about how fragile that feeling was, how easily it could shatter. When breakfast was done, Jack offered to help clean up, but Malia shook her head. "You've done enough. Go sit down." He gave her a quiet grin. "I don't sit easy." Still, he leaned against the counter, watching her move with the steady rhythm of someone who'd built her whole life on doing what needed to be done. "You said you'd tell me everything," Malia reminded him. Jack nodded, the light in his eyes dimming. "You might wish you never asked." "Tell me anyway." He rubbed his hands together, the tape peeling a little. "I met your husband, Tom, almost 12 years ago. He wasn't part of my crew, not really. He was a good man who did odd jobs for extra cash. When things went south with Trigger, Tom helped me hide some money. But it wasn't the money that mattered. It was the records that money came with. Bank numbers, names, shipment lists. Proof that Trigger's gang was running guns through the state. Tom took the files and buried them somewhere safe." Malia froze. "So my husband was involved?" "Not willingly," Jack said quickly. "He was scared, but he wanted out. He planned to turn the evidence in when the time was right. Trigger found out and came after him. Tom didn't make it home that night." The words hit Malia like cold water. "You're saying my husband didn't die in that construction accident?" Jack's eyes were full of regret. "I'm saying Trigger made it look that way." The kitchen grew silent. Only the ticking clock broke the stillness. Malia gripped the counter, her heart pounding. For years, she had carried grief, and now it twisted into something darker. Holly looked up from coloring at the table. "Mama Malia, are you okay?" Malia forced a smile. "Yes, sweetheart. Just thinking." Jack's voice softened. "I know this hurts, but I swear to you I didn't come here to bring trouble. I came to stop it before it found you." "Too late," she murmured. "It already has." Before Jack could respond, the sound of tires crunching on gravel made them both tense. Malia peeked through the curtain. A rusted pickup had parked by the mailbox. 2 men climbed out, heavy jackets, one with a shaved head. Jack's jaw clenched. "Stay back." He slipped out the back door and circled around the house. Malia watched from the kitchen window, heart in her throat. The men leaned against the truck, pretending to smoke. Jack stepped into view. One of them straightened, then spat into the snow. From inside, Malia couldn't hear their words, but she could see the tension. Jack's shoulders squared, the other man pointing toward the house. Jack shook his head slowly. One of them shoved him. The other laughed. Jack didn't move, didn't fight back, just stood his ground. After a few seconds, the men climbed back into the truck and roared away. When Jack came back inside, his knuckles were bleeding again, but his eyes were steady. "They're scouting," he said simply, "seeing if you scare easy." "Do I?" Malia asked. He gave a small smile. "Not a chance." That evening, the sky burned orange as the sun sank behind the ridge. Malia sat on the porch steps, watching the children chase the dog through the yard. Jack sat beside her, a shadow of weariness on his face. "You really think we can stop them?" she asked quietly. "I don't know," he admitted, "but I know we can fight back." The wind picked up, carrying the faint smell of pine and wood smoke. For a while they said nothing, just listened to the laughter of the children. Then Malia spoke again, voice trembling. "My husband died protecting someone else's child, didn't he?" Jack hesitated. "Yes. Holly's mother was being hunted by Trigger's men. Tom helped her hide Holly. When they found them, he fought back. He saved the girl's life." Malia pressed her hands to her face. The truth was too heavy to hold, yet somehow it made everything make sense. The late nights, the secret phone calls, the fear in her husband's eyes before he died. When she looked up again, her cheeks were wet. "All this time, I thought he was just tired from work." Jack's voice cracked. "He was brave. He died doing the right thing. I should have been the one." Malia wiped her eyes and stared at the horizon. "So what now?" "Now," Jack said, standing slowly, "we make sure his death means something." The sound of Holly's laughter drifted toward them, soft and pure against the fading light. Malia stood too, wrapping her arms around herself. The world felt both dangerous and sacred, full of things lost and things found. As the first stars appeared, she whispered a prayer she hadn't spoken aloud in years. "Lord, guide us. Keep these children safe." Jack turned toward her, his voice low but sure. "He's listening." Malia met his eyes and saw something there she hadn't seen in anyone for a long time. Truth. Not perfection, not peace, but the honest kind of truth that comes after you've broken and begun to heal. When they went inside, the house felt warmer somehow. Nathan and Holly curled up on the couch, heads together, fast asleep. Malia draped a blanket over them and looked towards the window. The snow had stopped. The stars were clear, bright, and endless. She turned off the light, whispering, "Tomorrow will be better." But outside, far down the road, a single motorcycle headlight blinked twice, once, then again, and vanished into the night. Morning light spilled through the kitchen, soft and golden, catching tiny motes of dust in the air. The storm had passed, but a hard chill still hung outside. Malia poured coffee and stared out the window, her thoughts heavy with everything Jack had told her. The hidden money, Trigger, her husband's death. It was too much, yet somehow she felt calmer now that the truth had a shape. Jack came in from the porch, carrying a small box of tools. "Fence gate's loose again. he said. Thought I'd fix it before the kids run out there. You don't have to do all this, she said, setting his mug on the table. I need to keep busy, he replied simply. Still learning how to live quiet. Malia gave him a faint smile. Quiet doesn't come easy after the kind of life you've had. He nodded. But maybe it's time I try. Nathan came bounding in, his hair sticking up. Can I help? Jack chuckled. Sure, kid. Grab that hammer. Through the window, Malia watched them work together, the man and the boy moving in sync, Jack guiding, Nathan eager to impress. Holly sat on the porch steps, humming softly to her teddy bear. For the first time in days, peace filled the yard like sunlight. Inside, Malia started making soup. She hummed without meaning to, a tune she hadn't sung since her husband was alive. By noon, the fence was fixed, and the smell of lunch drifted through the air. They gathered around the table, hands joined as Malia led a short prayer. Jack bowed his head, murmuring, Amen, a second behind her. Holly giggled at his timing. You're learning, Malia teased. Trying, he said, smiling back. The warmth between them was quiet but real. It startled her how natural it felt. This man, this girl, her boy, all gathered like a family she hadn't expected. After lunch, Jack's phone buzzed. He frowned, stepping outside to answer. Malia could see the tension return in his shoulders. When he came back, his face had changed. Hard again. Wary. That was an old contact, he said. Trigger's boys are asking around town. They know my bike's here. Malia's heart skipped. So what does that mean? It means they'll come closer soon, but we've got time to prepare. She set down the dish towel. And what do you suggest? Stay alert. Keep the kids inside, and trust me if I tell you to move fast. I'm not running again, she said firmly. Jack met her gaze. I know. That's why I'm staying. The words hung in the air. For a second, neither spoke. Then Malia nodded. All right, we'll face it together. That afternoon, clouds gathered again, heavy and gray. The air carried the faint scent of snow. Jack worked quietly at the barn, checking the locks. Malia sat near the window, writing down supplies they might need. The children built a fort out of blankets and chairs, their laughter echoing through the small house. It felt almost normal, almost safe. Near sunset, Jack came inside and leaned against the doorframe. It's holding, he said of the barn, but I'd still rather get you folks out of here before dark. We've run enough, Malia said. Let's just eat and pray they don't show tonight. Jack studied her a moment, then nodded. You've got more grit than most men I've met. She smirked faintly. That's supposed to be a compliment? It's the highest one I know. Dinner was quiet, but warm. Holly rested her head on her father's arm. Nathan told stories that made everyone laugh. For a short while, fear felt far away. After the dishes were done, Jack stood at the window, staring into the growing dark. Malia joined him, the soft glow of the lamp brushing her face. They won't stop, she whispered. I know, he said, but I won't either. For a moment, their hands brushed on the windowsill. Neither moved them away. Outside, the wind began to rise again, pushing the trees to whisper secrets they couldn't hear. The house creaked, alive with its people, its faith, its fragile hope. Malia looked at the man beside her, scarred, tired, but steady, and felt something stir she hadn't felt since before her husband died. Trust. She breathed out slowly. Whatever's coming, we'll face it as one. Jack turned his gaze to her, eyes soft in the half-light. That's all I ever wanted. The clock chimed softly. The children slept, and in that small house, peace lingered just a little longer, though the storm waiting beyond the trees had already begun to move. Morning light came gray and thin through the curtains. The house was still. Malia woke first, listening to the faint hum of the heater and the quiet breathing of the 2 children down the hall. She sat up slowly, her body heavy from another night of shallow sleep. Outside, frost glazed the windows, and the world looked hushed, as if holding its breath. She found Jack already outside, splitting wood behind the barn. The steady rhythm of the axe rose and fell, sharp against the silence. His breath steamed in the cold air, and each swing seemed to drive the past further from him. Malia wrapped herself in a coat and went out to meet him, her boots crunching the frozen ground. "You don't rest much," she said. He glanced up, wiping sweat from his brow. "Can't rest when there's work to do. Keeps my mind straight." "You mean keeps the guilt quiet?" He froze, axe halfway raised. Then he lowered it slowly and nodded. "Yeah, something like that." They stood for a moment in the cold, breath mingling. Malia studied his face, the scar near his temple, the weathered lines around his eyes. She realized she no longer saw a criminal. She saw a man trying, every day, to be better. "Coffee's on," she said softly. "Come in before you turn into ice." Inside, the house smelled of cinnamon and fresh bread. Nathan and Holly were at the table, coloring side by side. The simple sight made Malia smile. Jack sat across from them, rubbing his calloused hands, and watched the children like someone memorizing a life he'd almost lost. Holly held up her drawing proudly. "It's us," she said. "Me, Daddy, Malia, and Nathan." Malia leaned over. The picture was a tangle of bright colors, stick figures holding hands under a sun too big for the sky. "That's beautiful, sweetheart," she said. Jack swallowed hard, his voice rough. "You even drew Benny," he said, pointing to the little brown bear beside Holly's figure. Holly giggled. "He's part of the family." For a little while, laughter filled the kitchen. Malia felt something blooming quietly inside her, a fragile, warm hope. But just as the calm settled, a hard knock came at the door. Jack stiffened instantly. Malia's pulse jumped. She motioned for the kids to stay put and crossed to the door. Through the window, she saw Sheriff Daniels standing on the porch, his face drawn tight. "Morning, Sheriff," she said, opening the door halfway. "Everything all right?" "Could be better," he said. "We found fresh tire tracks out by Old Pine Road. Looks like someone's been watching your property again." Jack stood, stepping closer. "Trigger's crew?" "Most likely," the sheriff said. "I've got a deputy posted near the bridge, but I'd keep your lights low tonight. Whoever they are, they're bold." Malia nodded, her chest tightening. "What do they want now?" "Same thing they always wanted," Jack said quietly. "The money, and the proof that could bury them." After the sheriff left, the day grew long and uneasy. Jack moved through the house, checking windows, testing locks, setting up old motion lights. Malia helped where she could, though she hated the fear creeping back in. Nathan stayed near Holly, telling her stories to keep her distracted. By evening, clouds gathered low and dark. The wind moaned through the trees. Jack stood by the back door, scanning the field as dusk swallowed the sky. "They're out there," he said, "waiting for the right time." Malia joined him, her arms wrapped tight around herself. "What do we do?" He looked at her, his voice steady. "We trust each other. We stay ready." Later that night, after the kids were asleep, they sat by the fire. The room flickered gold, shadows dancing on the walls. Malia spoke quietly. "I used to think life was about surviving what happens to you, but maybe it's about who you let stand beside you when it does." Jack met her gaze, eyes soft and searching. "You sure you want me standing there?" "Yes," she said simply. "I'm sure." He nodded, the firelight catching in his eyes. "Then we'll make it through this, Malia. One way or another." Outside, a branch snapped in the dark. Malia stiffened, but Jack only listened, every muscle still. Then he whispered, "They're closer than we thought." And in that moment, surrounded by warmth and flickering firelight, Malia understood. Their quiet peace had been only the calm before the storm. The night pressed close around the house, thick and silent. Malia barely slept, her ears tuned for every creak, every whisper of wind. When morning finally came, the world outside was white again, snow covering the ground like a clean sheet trying to hide the danger underneath. Jack was already awake, sitting by the window with his coffee untouched. His eyes stayed on the woods. "They were out there last night," he said. "I saw headlights move and stop just beyond the ridge." Malia's stomach twisted. "Then they know we're here for sure." "They've known for days," he said quietly. "They're waiting for me to make a mistake." The children came into the room, still half asleep. Jack turned away from the window and smiled for them, trying to mask the tension. "Morning, kiddos. Who's ready for pancakes?" Holly brightened instantly. "Me!" Nathan grinned. "I'll help." Malia met Jack's eyes, grateful for the small normalcy he created. While the children laughed and mixed batter, she pulled him aside. "What's our next move?" "I called someone," he said. "A friend from before, someone who owes me. He's clean now, working at a garage in town. He can help us move Holly if it comes to that." Malia frowned. "Move her where?" "To safety," Jack said simply. "Someplace Trigger's men won't think to look." Her voice wavered. "And you?" "I stay. If they're coming for me." "No," she said firmly. "They'll come for all of us." Before he could reply, a car engine echoed down the road. Malia peeked through the curtain. A sheriff's cruiser rolled up the drive, snow crunching beneath its tires. Sheriff Daniels stepped out, coat collar high, his breath fogging the air. "We need to talk," he called. "Now." Jack opened the door before Malia could move. The sheriff's expression was grim. "One of Trigger's men turned up in a motel south of here. Dead, shot point blank." Malia gasped. "You think they're fighting each other?" Daniels shook his head. "No, I think they're cleaning up loose ends." Jack's jaw tightened. It means Trigger's running scared, but a scared man's twice as dangerous. The sheriff nodded. "Then keep your guard up. I'll circle by again tonight." When he left, the snow started falling harder, the world outside fading to white. Malia closed the door and leaned against it, heart thudding. Jack touched her shoulder gently. "It's getting close," he said. "But so are we." And for the first time, Malia believed him. The snow kept falling all afternoon, a steady curtain of white that blurred the world beyond the window. Inside, Malia tried to keep things normal. Warm soup on the stove, music low on the radio, and the children working on puzzles at the table. But underneath it all, her nerves hummed like a live wire. Jack moved quietly through the house, checking the windows, testing each door lock again. His movements were steady, controlled, like a soldier waiting for a battle he couldn't avoid. "You should sit for a while," Malia said softly. "You haven't eaten since morning." "I'll eat when they're safe," he replied. His voice carried a calm that almost scared her more than anger would have. The sky outside dimmed early, turning blue and gray. Nathan yawned and leaned against Holly. She giggled and pushed him back. Their small laughter filled the kitchen, easing the heavy air for a moment. Then, 3 sharp knocks on the back door. Malia froze. Jack's hand went to the gun tucked behind his belt. He motioned for her to take the children into the hallway. She obeyed without a word, heart pounding so hard she thought the sound would give them away. Jack opened the door an inch. Wind and snow swept in, along with a man's voice. "Easy, brother. It's me." Jack blinked, lowering the gun slightly. "Carter?" A man about Jack's age stood outside, bundled in a grease-stained jacket, snow in his beard. "Got your message? Heard you? We're in trouble." Jack let him in. "You still work at that garage?" Carter nodded. "Yeah, and I still keep my ears open. Trigger's boys are talking. They think you've got something that can bury them." "I don't," Jack said, "but they think Malia's husband hid it." Carter's eyes shifted to the woman standing at the doorway. "Then she's in danger too." "She knows," Jack said quietly. Carter exhaled hard. "All right. There's a cabin up past Miller's Creek. Old ranger station, nobody uses it anymore. You can hole up there for a few nights. I'll leave my truck by the road." Malia hesitated. "We can't just run forever." Jack met her gaze. "This isn't running. It's surviving." After Carter left, the house felt smaller, the shadows deeper. Malia turned off the radio and looked at Jack. "When do we go?" "Tonight," he said, "before they find this place." The snow outside thickened into a storm, whispering against the windows like a warning. The storm came down in thick sheets as they packed. Malia grabbed blankets, flashlights, and food, while Jack filled a duffel with tools. The children huddled by the door, eyes wide but silent, sensing the gravity in every hurried movement. When everything was ready, they stepped out into the wind. The snow stung their faces. Jack carried Holly in one arm, while Nathan held tightly to Malia's hand. The headlights from Carter's old truck flickered faintly through the white blur up the road. "Stay close," Jack said. "Don't look back." They trudged through the drifts, boots sinking deep. The sound of the storm drowned out everything until, faintly, came the growl of engines. Malia's heart clenched. "Jack, I hear them," he said. "Keep moving." The truck loomed ahead. Carter waved from the driver's seat, shouting over the wind. "Get in!" As they climbed in, headlights flashed behind them. Two dark vehicles sliding across the road, tires spitting slush. Bullets cracked against the snow. Malia screamed and ducked, pulling the children close. Jack fired back once, shattering a headlight. Carter slammed the truck into gear. The tires spun, then caught, launching them forward into the blinding storm. Snow whipped across the windshield. Malia clung to the children as the world roared around them. Jack turned, face grim, gun still ready. "Hold on!" Carter yelled. "We're not stopping!" The truck barreled through the darkness, leaving their old life, and the men who hunted them, buried in the storm's fury. For the first time in days, Malia whispered a single prayer. "Lord, get us through the night." The truck tore through the storm, its headlights cutting narrow tunnels through the snow. Carter gripped the wheel hard, jaw set. "We'll reach the old ranger station in 10 minutes, he shouted, "if the bridge isn't washed out." Malia held both children tight in the back seat. Holly's face was pressed against her shoulder, trembling. Nathan's small hands clutched her coat, knuckles white. Every bump in the road made her heart leap. Jack leaned between the seats, watching the dark through the rear window. "They're still behind us," he said. "2 trucks. They're keeping distance." "Then we'll lose them," Carter muttered. Road splits up ahead. Old forest trail. The engine roared as they veered left. Snow sprayed up around them, swallowing the world. Malia closed her eyes for a moment, whispering prayers under her breath. She didn't ask for safety anymore. Just strength. Finally, the forest thickened, branches scraping the sides of the truck. Carter slowed, headlights flickering across a small wooden cabin buried in snow. "That's it," he said. "End of the line." They jumped out quickly, grabbing what supplies they could. The cabin smelled of dust and cold wood. Jack checked every corner, every window. "No tracks but ours," he said. Nathan coughed from the cold. Malia wrapped him in a blanket and pulled Holly close beside him. "We'll be okay," she said, her voice trembling but strong. Jack stood by the window, staring into the dark. "They'll come," he murmured, "but we'll be ready." Carter placed a hand on his shoulder. "I'll go back to town, send word to the sheriff. If they follow me, I'll lead them off your trail." Jack nodded once. "Thank you, brother." When Carter's taillights disappeared into the storm, the cabin fell silent. Malia sat by the fire, the children asleep beside her. Jack knelt near the door, gun resting across his knee. Outside, the wind howled, but inside, they had faith, a fire, and each other. The cabin slept under a heavy blanket of snow. Inside, the fire burned low, painting the walls with gold light. Malia dozed in the armchair, one hand resting protectively on Holly's shoulder. A noise woke Jack before dawn. The crunch of boots on ice. He rose quietly, grabbed his gun, and moved toward the window. Two dark figures were approaching through the trees, flashlights cutting across the snow. "Malia," he whispered, "wake the kids." Her eyes opened instantly. Fear flashed, but she moved without panic. She bundled Holly and Nathan beneath the table, motioning for silence. Jack took position near the doorway. His pulse slowed, his breath steady. The first man reached the porch, boots thudding on the wooden steps. Jack swung the door open and fired once. The man dropped, snow bursting around him. The second man returned fire, splintering the frame beside Jack's head. Malia screamed as bullets shattered the window. Jack fired again, then shouted, "Run now!" Malia grabbed the children and darted toward the back door as the storm swallowed their cries. The storm roared as Malia pushed through the snow, clutching Nathan and Holly's hands. The cold cut into her skin, but she didn't stop. Behind them, gunfire cracked through the trees. Jack's voice echoed, sharp, desperate, telling them to keep running. They stumbled through the woods until Malia saw a faint glow ahead, headlights slicing through the storm. A sheriff's cruiser. Relief broke through her fear like sunlight. She waved frantically. Sheriff Daniels jumped out, rifle raised. "Get down!" he shouted. Two more shots rang from the cabin, then silence. Malia fell to her knees, gasping for air. "Jack still inside?" she cried. The sheriff called for backup and charged toward the cabin. Minutes later, the forest fell quiet, except for the wind. When he returned, he supported Jack's arm over his shoulder. Jack was bleeding from his side, but alive. Malia ran to them, tears freezing on her cheeks. "You're hurt." Jack gave a faint grin. "You should see the other guy." The sheriff smiled grimly. "Trigger's done. We got the rest in custody. It's over." Malia exhaled a sob, relief flooding her chest. She looked at Jack, the man she'd once feared, and saw nothing but courage. Weeks later, the town came together to rebuild her burned cabin. Jack stayed, helping fix fences and roofs, earning quiet nods from neighbors who once crossed the street to avoid him. Malia reopened her diner, renaming it Holly's Place. On a bright Sunday morning, the diner was full. Laughter, warmth, and music filling every corner. Holly sat beside her father, drawing new pictures. Nathan ran plates to customers, grinning wide. Malia poured coffee for Jack, their eyes meeting across the counter. "Feels like home again," she said. Jack smiled softly. "It is." Outside, sunlight glowed across the snow, and for the first time in a long time, peace stayed. Thank you for listening. Stories connect us in the most unexpected ways. If you felt that spark today, make sure you're subscribed. I share a new one daily, and the next might change your day.